everyone, I'm Allison Thompson.
My name's Hiran Zashni.
And today we're going to be talking about economic hardship. This overview we'll start off with the history, and then we'll go into the informational charts. We'll watch an economic hardship video. We'll talk about the current situations, what we could do in the future to help change it, and then we'll end it with questions. Here we'll start us off with talking about the history.
Families and their children that experience poverty when they're unable to achieve a minimum income and a decent standard of living is what puts them into that poverty or low income level. The current poverty measures were established in the 1960s, and they were determined by considering what a family needed to earn on a monthly basis and multiplying that by their family members to determine how much they needed to earn in order to sustain and to be able to take care of all their monthly necessities. The current federal poverty measures equals about 29% of the median household income, but whereas in the 1960s it was up to 50% of the median household income. This first chart here shows you a little bit of the history on the federal poverty guidelines. The persons of family in the household indicates how many members were in the household, and then the amount on the right shows you the lowest or the minimum amount of money they had to earn as a family in order to be considered in the low income bracket. This chart here shows you the children living in low income and poor families. So the numbers on the left are the children's ages, and then on the right they're denoted by colors, the poor family percentage and the low income family percentage. The low income families earn a little bit more than poor families do. Poor families really fall underneath the poverty, at or below poverty levels. These families may be living in transitional housing, they may be homeless, they may be living with family members and have no permanent address because they're unable to find a job or sustain their families high enough to earn enough money to break out of that poverty level.
We will now show you a video by Catherine Drewsbury Conger, and in this video she will discuss how low income and economic hardship impacts not only the parents but the children as well.
I've been conducting a study for the last 25 years with a group of over 500 families in Iowa, and looking at how economic hardship gets inside the family. We often think about poverty and economic hardship as affecting the adults in the family, but I'm particularly interested in how economic context in the community impact the parents and ultimately impact the kids. Poverty is feeling like you don't have enough money to pay your bills, you don't have enough money to get the kind of food that you would like to eat, to get the kind of clothes that you'd like to have. Poverty is having to move out of a house that you really like into cheaper housing, maybe into a less desirable neighborhood, and really making a lot of hard financial decisions in terms of where your money's going to come from for the next day, the next week, the next month. One of the things that we find is that parents who are distracted by dealing with too many bills to pay and not having any money left over at the end of the month, is that there is an increase in marital conflict, and in turn that marital conflict then spills over in terms of how they interact with their children. Poverty really impacts the opportunities for children and their ability to participate in things at school. So you don't want to be the kid who maybe is on the basketball team and there's an away game, and after the basketball game everybody goes to McDonald's. Well, you could maybe go to the basketball game, but you have no money to go to McDonald's. So there's kind of that factor in terms of opportunities that you decide to give up because your family just doesn't have any money that they can atmosphere to do those kind of typical activities. Former life, when I was working with early childhood programs in the state of Illinois, I worked with a number of Head Start programs, and it really is an important avenue for parents living at the poverty level to be able to get their children into an early childhood program and also often participate as volunteers, so they really feel like they're making a contribution and they're making connections to people in the communities. Sometimes we like to think conveniently of poverty as an individual problem or a personal deficiency, when in fact many individuals end up in poverty through no fault of their own, but because maybe they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or they never had opportunities to work their way out of poverty that they experienced in childhood. And so I think that it is important for everybody who's working in social services and in government and school systems to remember that we're dealing with people first, and that poverty just happens to be the condition that people are living in, and it's not a personal characteristic of individuals.
Alright, I hope you enjoyed that video. We're now going to be talking about the current situations. In our current situation are some children and families at a greater risk for economic hardship than others? And we found that yes, they are. Research shows single parents, parents with only a high school degree, and immigrant parents and minorities all have a greater risk at hardship than others. A primary risk factor for being low income and low levels of parental education is 83% of children whose parents have less than a high school diploma live in low income families. And over half of parents who only have a high school degree are low income as well. Only 27% of workers in the U.S. have a college degree. Single-parent families are at a greater risk of economic hardship as well. Two-parent families are at a higher risk because they have twice the earning potential. However, more than 1 in 4 children with married parents live in low income.
So currently, low-income rates for minority children are higher than those for white children because of the prevalence of the other risk factors, such as the educational attainment by the parents and lower levels of potential earnings due to the fact that they are less likely to receive a high school diploma or equivalent. 60% of Black and Latino children are living in a low-income economic status, as well as 57% of American Indian children and 26% of white children. The circle graph shows you the percentages and the races of children living in low-income families. As well as the minorities, having immigrant parents also increases a child's chance of living in poverty. About 16 million people are born with are living with a foreign-born parent. So an example that we have for you with economic hardship is the prevalence of children without health insurance by parents that are immigrants. So health insurance is sometimes a topic that is on the low end of the necessity spectrum for families with low income, because they are struggling just enough to get food, shelter, clothing, and basic essentials taken care of. So things like health insurance and well checks and things like that for their children are not happening. So the graph on the bottom of this slide shows you the percentages of families that do not have health insurance. So for the native-born population, only 18.1% of the population is without health insurance. However, the recent immigrant population experiences about 44.6% of the population without health insurance. And all those things flow directly into why families experience tough times or economic hardship.
This now leads us to our next question. And our next question is it possible to reduce economic hardship among American families? We found that yes, it is, but only with the right leadership, a strong national commitment, and a good policy, we can change economic hardship among Americans. Real fast, did you know that the U.S. spends $500 billion a year on child poverty when that money could be going towards the healthcare system and the criminal justice system? So now, to get towards this, we must hit on at least 5 points that Huron will touch up on.
So in order to combat and try to break the cycle of economic hardship and poverty and families living in low income economic status, there are some things that we can do to try to break that cycle. If we as a community can work together to strengthen the bargaining power of workers. So we must work together to try to make families that, or individuals that are working have a better potential to earn more money. We also can expand the earned income tax credit, and with that increase the minimum wage. So a lot of low-income families rely on that bonus that they receive during income tax season to kind of propel them through the next few months, because they know that their wages are not going to sustain them for that long. However, we could combat that by allowing families or allowing individuals to earn more hourly so that they're able to sustain themselves a little longer than just paycheck to paycheck. With that is the important part of being able to train and educate our workers. We can't expect families to bust out of that low income cycle if they're only earning a menial wage and there's no room for higher earnings or raises or potential to grow within the community or to grow within their job. We want to be able to have the opportunity to educate them so that they're able to learn more skills within their position so that there is room for growth, and with the growth comes higher earning potential. And finally, within that, a lot of times what happens with single parents or families living in low income, they're working more than one job, or the job that they are working is not very flexible and they don't offer any paid time off. Well, how can we expect families to work towards getting out of that economic hardship if they are not in a job that allows them the flexibility to take their children to doctor visits or to make parent-teacher conferences and create relationships with their teachers? And then if ever they're sick or their child is sick, feel as if they have the room to take a day off that isn't paid. A lot of times, parents will go to work sick because they can't afford to take that day off because they know what that lack of wages for the day will do to their family. It's not something that they can make up the next day or the day after. It's something that will hurt them in the long run because they're unable to bounce back from that.
This now leads us to our questions. And we have 3 questions for you today. The first one is, what is economic hardship?
So economic hardship is the term that we use for families that are living in tough times. They may or may not fall under the poor or poverty category. Basically, it means that their monthly wages and their monthly earnings are not enough to sustain them beyond 30 days. So they're really living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to put enough food on the table to provide the basic necessities. And they may be even living in transitional housing at the moment because they're unable to find a place to live that they can afford, and also, have money left over for the bills and foods and things like that. Who all is at a greater risk?
This is really 4 groups, and those 4 groups are single parents, and parents who only have a high school degree or may not even have a high school degree, immigrant families, and families that are minorities. Our last question is, how can we reduce economic hardship?
There's many things we can do to try to break the cycle of poverty and reduce the families that are experiencing tough times. We talked a little bit before about the ability for employees or hourly employees to move up within their company so that they have a greater chance of a higher earning potential. We can work towards bettering our school system so that the education that they're receiving is enough so that they can come out of high school or college with a job that will earn them enough money to be able to sustain themselves. And we can work together as future educators, as a community, to recognize that low-income families have the potential to become great people and do great things as long as they have the support and the materials and the tools necessary to be able to work towards making a better future for themselves.
We now leave you guys with 3 questions, and we hope you can answer these after you watch this lesson. First one is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this presentation and why?
If anything, what would you suggest that we do differently?
And how organized was the information presented?
Our final slide are just some resources that we used for this presentation. We hope that you've learned a little bit about economic hardship and some ways that we can break that cycle, and we hope that you enjoyed our presentation.
Thank you for watching.